Alright, welcome to episode 4 of A Beginner's Guide to LEGO Mindstorms. So today, in the last episode, we started to look at programming, and we made a very, very simple program. Well, in this episode, we're going to be making much more complicated programs that allow the robot not only to move much further in different directions, but also to make noises and display images on the NXT brick. So there's a lot to cover in this episode. I may have to split it into 2 parts because there is so much to cover. And not only that, but in Chapter 4 of the LEGO Mindstorms NXT 2.0 Discovery book, the book that I am using to help do this video series with. By the way, I recommend that you buy this if you're watching the series, but you can watch the series standalone as well. But anyway, in Chapter 4, they start introducing what they call discoveries. And they don't tell you exactly how to program the robot like they do in the main text, so you have to try and figure out some things for yourself in these. We'll be doing some of these. I can't guarantee that we will do them all. It'll just take way too much time, but I'll do the ones that I see important or maybe particularly challenging to help you along a little bit. There's even ones where you have to try and make something to help modify the robots to do something. So those are going to be very challenging and time consuming, so I don't know if I will get to those, but we'll see what we can do. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So we'll be working with programming blocks, the move, the sound, and the display blocks in this episode. Now they have a brief explanation of what programming blocks do. I'm not going to go through that. I'm going to go ahead and go straight to the move block. So it tells us to create a new program called Explore Move, which I'll go ahead and do real quick. And I don't know why it has this black line here. It shouldn't. So I hope I'm actually typing Explore Move. And it will take a few moments for it to load once again. And here it is. And it looks like I typed it right, so that's good. So we're going to be seeing the move block in action, and it tells you exactly how to program it. Like I said, the discoveries will not, but in this case it does. So it says to pick 2 move blocks from the programming palette and place them on the work area. Like so. Make sure you click back to the first one. So by default, the blocks that we've placed are configured to make the robot go forward for about half a second or so. So that's not very impressive, but we're going to make something a lot cooler, especially later on. This one is okay. So we're going to modify the configurations. Wait. Okay, no. I'm sorry. We want to make the first move block make the robot drive backward and the other block to steer the robot. To accomplish this, you'll change the settings in the configuration panel of each block. I mentioned that briefly in episode 3, but today we're going to be looking at it in much more detail. That's this down here. And while the blocks are important, I would say that this is even more important because this tells the real settings. The speed, duration, steering, direction, all that good stuff. So we're going to modify the configurations of the second block. I'm sorry, no, that doesn't make any sense. They skipped a step here, but they do have the picture to help show you. So the first block, all we have to do is where it says direction, we're going to make it go backward by clicking here on the down arrow. This is alright. We're going to make it power 100, so this will be the fastest that it can go. And we're going to change the duration to 2 rotations instead of 1. So it'll be a little longer. I'm sorry that you can't see that. I don't know why not. I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong one. I'm sorry about that. Okay, no, we're actually going to change the duration to be 3 seconds. 2 rotations is for the next one. So 3 seconds at 50% power, or roundabouts there. I don't know if I can get exactly there. There, 50. And backwards. So backwards at 50% power for 3 seconds. So that is the first block. Now the second block is going to be forward, but we're going to change this dial all the way to the right. That's going to make it do a very sharp turn. You can make it do gradual turns like this, but we want to do a sharp turn, so we're going to turn it all the way to the right. Now this is the one that will be at power 100 for 2 rotations. And I believe that is it for this program, so I'll go ahead and download it, and I'll show you what the program does in just a second. Alright, so that was our first real program, because the last program was pretty much just drag a move block in there and download it. So that was the first real program. So it moved forward for a little bit. What was it? I'm sorry, it moved backward for a little bit, and then it did a very sharp turn. So before we move any further, we're going to look at the configuration panel just a bit more so that we can understand it a bit better, know what we're actually configuring it to do, and not just mindlessly doing it. Alright, there we go. So, at the top here, well, on the side it says move, and it has some letters and numbers. The book tells us not to worry about that yet, so I'm not going to. Things we do need to worry about, though, ports. Now, I told you about the ports on the robot earlier. That is where the cables hook into. So right now, it's already configured for what we need, ports B and C. So for now we don't need to change anything, but later on when we alter which ports we're activating, we will need to change that. Direction is pretty obvious. It's just going to tell you whether or not it's going to go forward or backward. And then you can also use the move block to make the motor stop moving by selecting the stop sign in this direction box, like that. And everything else fades out. Down here we have steering, once again pretty obvious. Now, does it say anything about these arrows? It does not, so once again we're not going to worry about that. But yeah, it says if you just, it's basically just, do you want to go forward, straight forward, do a gradual turn or a very sharp turn, and then which direction do you want to go in. Next we have power. Once again pretty obvious. That's going to determine how fast it's going, how hard the motors are working. And you could put it at 0 if you wanted. 1 would be very interesting. I'd like to see that. Duration. Now duration has quite a few things that you can do. Rotation, well, first you're going to type in a number here. But then we have all these, and then once again I don't know why it's doing this, but we have all these different configurations here, or units I should say. We have rotations, degrees, seconds, or unlimited, which I guess it means it goes on forever or something like that. Rotations, so that controls the number of times the wheels go through a complete rotation. For example, when you set duration to 2 rotations in the sample program, both wheels made 2 complete rotations. Degrees, now we're getting into some mathematics here, works like rotation except that it controls the number of degrees that the wheels turn. For example, you could set duration to 180 degrees to make the wheels turn 1/2 rotation. Now one thing to note, if you set it to 180 degrees, it's not going to do a half circle. So it doesn't work like that. It's strictly how the wheels are turning. The wheels turn 180 degrees. It doesn't mean that the robot is going to do a 180 degree turn. You'll have to experiment with that if you want it to do so. And it does have a note there about that. And then finally, unlimited, it doesn't go into it all. So for now, we'll just assume that we're not going to use that. And then seconds is pretty obvious. So now it does, it has some of these discoveries here. It also tells you about the configuration icons. By looking at these icons, you can roughly determine what a block does. This is a useful way to get a general overview of how a program works, and that is the 3 little symbols right here. I'm not going to worry about, well, you can see it's different here. And it's zooming in and out a bit. Like this one, we told it to go backward at half speed, and this one we told it to do a turn at full speed. So it kind of has a little overview of what's going on there. And if we change something, you can see that the arrow changed there. Or if I change it to degrees, that changed. Or if I change the power, see it went down to 0. So it's basically just a little overview in case you have a bunch of blocks and you need to look at something like without clicking on it and looking at all the stuff on the configuration panel. Just a quick, okay, what did that one do again? So that's pretty convenient. So I guess we'll go ahead and do some of the discoveries. Discovery number 1, accelerate. Difficulty easy. So in this one, we're going to learn, well, it says now you've learned some important information about the move block, you're ready to experiment with it. The goal in this discovery will be to create a program that makes the robot move slowly at first, but accelerate as the program progresses. To begin, place 10 move blocks in the work area and configure the first one as shown in figure 4.7. And basically, it's just to go at power 10 for 1 second. Configure the second one the same way, but set the motor's power setting to 20. In subsequent blocks, set the power setting to 30 and so on, incrementing it by 10 with each block. What happens when you run this program? So it basically tells you exactly what to do. So we'll go ahead and X out of this. We're not going to save the changes. And we'll call it Discovery 1. So we'll start by putting our 10 move blocks here. Let me zoom out so you can see this a little better. So we still need 9 move blocks. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, doesn't matter, 10. Alright. So then we're just going to change all of these down here. I'll do the first couple in front of the camera, and then I think you'll figure it out by then, and I'll just finish it and show you what the program does. So we're just going to leave this at forward. We're going to make the duration 1 second for all of these, and we'll set this one at 10. Now one thing that does not tell you to do, but I am going to do for this one, is I'm going to set this to coast. Now the next action button determines whether or not it's going to do an abrupt stop or a gradual stop. Coast, of course, is the gradual stop. Or in this case, it's going to lead into the next program block, so it won't go at duration 10, then stop, duration 20, then stop. It'll just be one fluid movement where it speeds up. So I think this will make the program look a lot better. I've already tried out this program before, and it certainly looks better like that. So I'll go ahead and do one more for you just so you get the hang of it. Forward for 1 second, and this time we'll do it at 20 and set the coast. So I think you get it. For the next ones, just set it at 30, 40, 50, so on, and I'll show you what the program looks like in just a moment. Now one thing I do want to mention is that the only reason it turned was because the wheels got caught up in the grouting of the tile. Nothing wrong with the program. So moving right along, there's still 3 more to do with movement. We have looking back, move that bot, and robo speller. I'm just going to do one more. I'm going to do number 3 because that kind of also incorporates number 2. In number 2, we try to get the robot to do a 180-degree turn in place. Now, as I mentioned before, you can't just set it to 180 degrees and be done with it. You have to do some experimenting with it. Fortunately, I already have, but it is going to be different for every robot, so I'm going to give you my answer, but it's not going to be the same for everybody's robot. It depends on the type of flooring you have, flaws in the flooring, flaws in the making of the robot, the actual parts of the robot, all that kind of stuff. Maybe even air temperature, humidity. So I don't know. I'm just making some guesses here, but anyway, for mine is 480 degrees. So I've already figured that one out. But at number 3, it tells us to use 3 move blocks, one to move forward for 3 seconds at 50% power, then it makes a 180-degree turn, and then it returns to its starting position. So at number 3, we're basically going to be just adding to number 2. And at number 4, it just tells you to make it so it draws the first letter of your name. That's kind of more for fun, if you ask me, so I'm going to skip that one. I'll go ahead and X out of this program. Do Discovery 3. I do recommend that you do all of these, just so that you get used to it. But just so that this isn't incredibly long, I already think I'm going to have to divide this into a few different, probably at least 2 or 3 different parts. I don't want to spend any more time on movement than I already have. So 3 move blocks. The first one, as I mentioned before, is to move forward for 3 seconds at 50% power. So we'll go ahead and zoom in on the configuration panel. So we don't have to mess with any of this. So forward at 50% power for 3, no wait, not 31, 3 seconds. So that's the first one. Now we'll go ahead and make it do the 180-degree turn. So we have to slide this all the way to the right. Then to tell us, it doesn't tell you what percent power to do it at. I'll just try 100. And then 480 degrees. And then return to its starting position, so we'll just do forward at 50% power for 3 seconds once again. Alright, so I'll show you how the program turns out here in just a moment. So obviously the turn was approximate. It worked fine the other day. Today it wasn't quite perfect. It was almost there though. So as you can see, robots are a bit temperamental, especially when it comes to making turns. So as I said, there's 2 more discoveries, one of which I pretty much covered, the other one which I didn't. Highly recommend that you do though, yourself, but depending on what the first letter of your name is, I can't help you with that, because there's about, I think there's 26 letters of the alphabet. So, there's only a 1 in 26 chance that we help you out. So I'm going to go ahead and end this episode here. In part 2 of this episode, we'll at least be looking at the sound block, and we may also cover the display block in that episode. In fact, I have a feeling that we probably will. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching, happy robot building, and we will see you next time.